All right. Welcome to the Publio podcast. I'm Keith Reynolds, and this show is for CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, and managers who seek to grow their business with media and inbound marketing. Thank you for joining us. If you want to learn more, we've got a masterclass and a whole workshop online learning center to help executives like you grow their business, use media, develop your podcasts. Really excited to have you join us. I'm here with Jesse Glassberg. Welcome, Jesse.
Hey, everybody. How are you today?
How's it going? What'd you do this weekend?
It was Halloween this weekend, so I went to a few parties. I dressed up as Huggy Bear from Starsky and Hutch, pretty much a pimp outfit, as you'd say. But it went over very well, so I was excited, and it was probably the most comfortable thing I've worn in years as well. So
I saw the picture. You also looked like Randy Savage.
I did look like the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Yeah, I actually probably like that better. Yeah, my beard was a lot thicker then too, so it really fit the costume.
Very cool. Well, we got a great show today, and
we do.
We're featuring Dan Chichester, who's just an amazing guy. Comic book writer. A creative consultant, chief digital officer, and now he's working with companies to develop their story online. Yeah, and so just really look forward to sharing it. Great conversation.
I had quite a personal connection with this one. Me and my dad have been collecting comic books for years. We have a lot of Spider-Man and a lot of Daredevil, and he's worked on a lot of Daredevil comics himself. He's worked on that new What If series that's really popular on Disney Plus right now. It looks like he's done some work for DC as well with Batman, who's probably my favorite character of all time. So yeah, I was a little giddy on this one. I was really excited to talk to him, and then to find out he's got this whole other life in business was extremely fascinating. So it was a really good interview.
Yeah, and he keeps a really interesting blog about his comic book and also some of his creative endeavors at storymaze.substack.com. So if you like what you hear on the podcast, definitely check him out.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get rolling. Really thrilled to have you, Dan. Welcome.
Thanks, Keith. And I'll expand on that just a little bit, if you don't mind. The comic book editing and writing was sort of part one of my career for Marvel Comics, and a lot of those titles, as you sort of cited, Daredevil, Nick Fury, Captain America, Hellraiser, are probably few of the ones that are well known of the intellectual properties that I've worked on. But in addition to being a creative writer, I've also been a marketing writer, and the advertising work that I've done for companies like Ogilvy and TBWA have been in different roles. Strategy, certainly, digital strategy, most especially, but I've also played roles that have ranged from chief creative officer to chief digital officer to chief experience officer across clients, certainly within the healthcare industry, like Merck and Pfizer, Novartis, some of the bigger names, but a lot of technology companies such as IBM and Siemens have been part of that as well.
Clearly in command of communications here, and really thrilled to have you on the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Good to see you.
So, I love to start out asking why. Like, why did you get into comic book writing, and how did that expand you to where you are today? It's a fascinating story.
Well, I think we only have 25 minutes, so we might not have a chance to get into it. Version. The thing is, and this kind of maybe lands into my current theory of storytelling, which I kind of call the story maze, and we can get into that later. But I stumbled into comics. I went to film school. My love was film. My desire was to get into the film industry. I had read comics extensively as a kid, up till about 13 or so, and then suddenly stopped for reasons I don't really know, probably puberty. But ultimately, I didn't really pick up a comic again from that age until I was in my junior year of college. and I had run out of money. Film school is an expensive proposition. I made my student film and used up my parents' money and my money, and went to the student employment office. And there on the board was a notice for a typist at Marvel Comics. So I was focused on writing. I was focused on screenwriting, especially. I said to myself, geez, I used to read comics and I'm a pretty fast typist. Went in and didn't get that job, but they had just given it away to somebody else. But the people I spoke with were impressed enough that they introduced me to somebody else in the company who was looking to hire the assistant to the editor-in-chief. So I was suddenly I was in this grunt work position, sort of at the center of power with no power at the same time, and made enough of an impression that it ended up being an offer later on for an assistant editor's position, which I took after graduation, thinking, okay, this will be a nice segue. It's guaranteed employment after graduation. I'm still heading west, right, to Hollywood, but one thing led to another in that maze-like way, in a good way. So the assistant editor job became some writing assignments. The writing assignments became an editor's job. And before I knew it, I had a full-fledged career within comics, both in a staff position and editorial position. So I'm sorry, a freelance position over time. So that really became the way into it, and not really planning it, but having been relatively successful, both in terms of assignments, but also as a learning mechanism, as a way to sort of see what stories could be, and within that medium. And then I think that's something I've continued to leverage today. It was a really good lesson of something that I could build other things upon.
Isn't that a great part of New York City, is that you can find your craft, work your way in it, fight the organizational battles, and really build your place in the world, and then, take off from there.
Yeah, I would like to say it was planned, but it clearly wasn't.
Never is.
It was very much, even getting into advertising after that was a sort of a coincidence, in the sense that the comics industry collapsed. Comics industry collapsed in the mid-90s in a big way, put a lot of people out of work, out of assignments, out of opportunities. It did dovetail with a growing interest I had with digital technology, and that allowed for some conversations which ultimately opened doors in advertising and got me hired for my first advertising assignments.
So now you're starting to bend those skills and that creativity towards a more corporate direction. How did you, what was different from writing comics to getting into the highest, echelons of the advertising industry and working on strategy?
Well, everything I think within advertising is strategic, right? You want to have the right insights, you want to have the right knowledge base, so that you can create solutions for that. What you're doing within a comic book story, at least the ones I was doing, was you're still trying to achieve the end goal. What's the end goal of the story? What kind of emotional, situational thing are you trying to establish for these fantastic characters? Most of the things I was writing were superhero or supernatural type of things. So these situations were extraordinary, but they also, they used extraordinary technologies, fantastic technologies, maybe things that didn't exist then, but do exist now. Nanotechnologies exist now, didn't exist then, but we throw them into every story. Fusion generators, didn't exist then. Now it's something that's kind of going on now. So you're taking research, because I would research stories extensively. You would take the situational things that you want to achieve for the character or the plot line, and you would aim these at the story. And you would then have to bring them through. You'd have to work collaboratively with teams, with your penciler, with your inker, with your colorist, with your editor. All of these things were unintentional lessons that later, as I got into advertising, and I would have to do research. Why does IBM design their computers this way? What is the technology behind this new treatment type? The fact I could do research and understand this and bring it down to a base level was something that served me well. The fact that I now had to work with UX experts, that I had to work with art directors, that I had to work with creative directors, that I had to work with account managers, all of these roles became something that I was then able to channel into that. And as I graduated up sort of the hierarchy and then became a creative director and creative lead in many places, was that the editorial work I had done when I had to wrangle teams of writers and artists and inkers and so forth and guide them toward the set delivery of a book. Well, those lessons came into play as well. Again, not intentional. I'd like to say, hey, I'm smart enough to do that, but I had enough osmosis going on that I was then able to apply that work to advertising successfully.
So that's really interesting, because when we met, you were working with an immersion lab and bringing all kinds of elements into storytelling. And when we were getting ready for the show, we joked you could turn anything into a story. Tell us a little bit about the immersion lab and, moving off the flat page to 3D worlds.
I never looked at it as a flat page, and still don't look at it as a flat page, right? Much as I look at the screen when I'm doing digital work as a window or a doorway into different experiences that we're creating. If we do the job right there, everything vanishes, right? The screen vanishes, and now I'm actually interacting with something. I despise digital work that is just, let's play this animation, let's play this video. That's a lean back experience. I want you to lean forward. I want you to interact with something. I want you to take part in a digital experience that I'm creating. So I never looked at the page when I was doing comics more exclusively as a flat page. I was working with an artist, and we were talking about this storyline, and we wanted readers to lean into the page. The flatness of that would vanish, and the dynamics of the visuals that somebody would be creating would draw you in, right? These are storylines and visuals that are not one plane. They are multi-plane visuals that somebody is then entering into worlds. And from my point of view, the writing that we're doing, we're creating situations and characters and moments and emotions that are drawing that reader in. That's that immersion, right? That is that completeness of a world. And I'm now part of that. Now, moving ahead to what we're doing now, and we can talk about how comics could actually achieve that as well in this world, but working with that innovation lab that you cite, when I was the chief experience officer for Ogilvy Health, and my job was to work with many of their digital technologies and their digital experts and sort of bring those solutions forward for their healthcare clients. We had an innovation lab, a set place and set experts that would think about the latest technologies and sometimes build them, or take a piece of technology and recreate it, take a VR viewer and pull it apart and build a new version of that, or take an interactive screen table and look and pull it apart and look at new ways to use that. Those were places where you could then say, what's the insight, right? This is the typical job in advertising. What's the insight that we know about a persona? What is the goal that we want to achieve? What's the objective that we want them to get to, the behavior we want to change in them, or represent to them a certain solution? And then we'd look at that technology and we would say, here's how it can immerse them. We can create a game, and that game can involve them in something. We can create a simulation. That simulation can take them through it in a way that they become a person, or they have agency to work with a character within that simulation to learn new things about it. So it's a different aspect of pulling in the audience by using technology. And again, the page vanished if you did it right. The screen vanishes if you do it right.
So you often bridge between the chief executive or the business owner, the entrepreneur. Now, how do you, what is your experience in helping bring along that side? Because you've got to answer their so what, right? And how do you work with them to help see all of this that you see with your creative mind, and then bring people along who are trying to do things, like get sales and run a business and manage, an organization?
I think I've become weary of the chief titles. I've had a few of them, and if I don't have another, I'll be okay. But they have served me well, and they put me in good positions, and they've allowed me to rise to the occasion. So I think you have to believe what you're selling, and that is the most important part of it. And that's the most important part when you're dealing with next level technologies or next level potential experiences that you're creating. And I'm going to focus on the digital area because that's sort of been my place of expertise and what I'm still remain passionate about, even with the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world doing strange things to us. You have to believe it. You have to understand the technology enough. Not that you have to be the expert. There are other people who are maybe going to be more into the coding and the hardware, but you have to believe in it and have used it and have thought about it and experienced it yourself, so that you then see the opportunities. The worst places for an executive or a business leader to try to sell something to another business leader, right, from marketing or advertising, is to go in and say, let's sprinkle a little VR on that. Let's throw a little augmented reality in the solution. What about a voice skill? Have you thought about that? What about the Twitter? Can we put the Twitter on this? And these are coming from people who have probably never picked up a VR headset, who've never used Twitter extensively, who've never been on TikTok or whatever it is. And if you don't experience it for yourself, then you can't represent it correctly. That's the first part. And then if you have done it, then you can start to go back to those conditions we talked about before. What's the insight? What's the goal? And then you can start to sort of reverse engineer. Does this really achieve something for that customer, for that audience, for that doctor, for that person with a certain condition, within healthcare, and then start to say, all right, these are how the pieces connect. And then you're telling a tangible story. I don't think I've ever been successful selling anything by saying, we're going to use X technology, and that's what we're going to do. I would paint a story of what's going to happen. How is somebody going to experience this? How are they going to experience the website we're building for you? How are they going to experience this virtual reality situation that we're going to create for them? What are they going to see? What are they going to go through? How are they going to immerse themselves, within this? They're achieving something for themselves that is their goal, not your goal, their goal, because ultimately they are the hero of the situation you're creating.
And that's what we have to do, is create that through the looking glass kind of experience where we're not
absolutely.
So are you saying that an executive should be staying on top of this and should be understanding the technologies in a firsthand way, or can a leader get anybody in, as technology evolves, it's the leadership skills that allow them to manage the creativity without maybe knowing how to log into Twitter?
I'm sure there are executives who are being promoted even as we speak, and far more successful than I will ever be or would want to be, who will tell you that I got people for that, and I could just go in and say I've used this and we experienced this and I can sell it through and be very successful doing that. I don't want to do that. I don't feel that it has the moment of integrity and the moment of validation that I could actually look that business owners in the eye and say, I have done this and I know that this will work for you. I've been in those situations where somebody else who's never used some of those technologies is trying to sell something forward. And maybe you do, maybe you sell it forward in that moment. But if somebody starts to peel away at that just a little bit, it all breaks down.
So authenticity really matters.
So authenticity is everything. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be an expert in every facet of it. When I would sell through virtual reality things, working with that innovation lab team was top notch. These guys were top of their class in terms of what they could do and how they could build things and, again, pull apart things and rebuild them in new ways. I was not a coder, but I could understand what they were doing. I could talk about their goals. I could understand their restrictions or how they would route around things or create new solutions. But I had tried on that headset. I had tried on these platforms to sort of then say, all right, is this flexible? Does this feel like something somebody would really use? Or is this just technology for technology's sake? I'm a big fan of the ultimate potential of augmented reality, the ability to look through a certain type of device and then see other things superimposed on our world, as opposed to virtual reality where you're putting on a helmet and you're seeing everything all at once. But right now it's a bit of a kludge. Let's be honest, right? I have to hold up a device and I have to look through the camera of that device, and that device then needs to project something on the world. It might be an arrow or a piece of data or a little miniature diorama of something like that. All right, that's kind of interesting, and maybe in the right situation that does achieve something. But for certain populations, certain audiences, that's going to be confusing. There's going to be 14 steps to get to something. So if you haven't used that and understood, all right, no, this is really easy to get, or it's not, then I don't think you have the fortitude to really stand up there and do it in the right way. Plenty of people, again, will do it.
In an earlier episode, we interviewed John Winkle, who heads up the Stanford Partnership and founded Innovation Week.
Sure.
And, it really came through that he's a hacker. It's not that he spends his time managing all of the technology, but when push comes to shove, he can walk in and
he's picked it up, and he understands what it's like to get his hands around it. So
what do you see now in your current work? You said you love the digital palette. Tell us about what you are really seeing as like the here and now, and where are things going, and what do you enjoy working on?
All I will tell you about is the here and now. I don't believe in future projecting. I think the best way to look like an idiot is to project the future and say, and I've spent enough time looking like an idiot on different things. I go back to the old quote: the best way to predict the future is to make it, right? And that's anything else about this is going to be in 4 years from now. We've been hearing for 10 years, virtual reality is right around the corner. Augmented reality is the next thing. Will be eventually, but I can go back to the 2020 predictions, and they're the same as the 2022 predictions, on certain things. I think that immersive world has potential, right? And that's exciting. It's also dangerous, right? It's also fraught with complications of distancing people more. But I think there's some really interesting things being done there that are worth looking at in terms of,
in the midst of all the Facebook trauma you mentioned, their whole push into the metaverse is really moving in that direction, right?
Right. And the metaverse is, one of these make-believe terms that they'll push on certain things. And if you go back to the creation of the metaverse term, it goes back to cyberpunk novels where the metaverse is a not good thing. Nobody wants to be the metaverse, right? The metaverse is a distancing, unholy place. So I don't really want.
There's a certain irony in that.
There's a complete disassociation and not really understanding where it comes from these tech lords in a certain way. Yeah. But I think there has been proven places where immersive experiences have closed the gap on understanding. I know a very great group of people who create VR experiences called Friends with Hologram, which might be the best name of a company ever. And they've done immersive VR work that has shown people how there's distancing within corporate conversations. How you can close out certain people in a conversation by putting everybody in an immersive place. And look, you're taking on the role of, say, a woman in a business meeting, and look how you're being shut out. So being in that situation, everybody walks away from it with a better understanding.
And part of it's the mindset. I remember reading a book, and then a long time ago, I'll just say that, and it made the analogy of, when you're on a virtual executive team, you're like the Knights of the Round Table, and you still have to act and behave and make decisions as if you were there, even though you're sitting in different countries.
Right. And you're talking about situations like we're in right now. We're on Zoom things. I'm talking about something where you're putting somebody into an imaginary experience, a virtual reality experience, which is creating something different.
It's the full extension of that. Exactly.
Right. That's exciting. I think voice skills are still nascent, and there's a lot to be done there in terms of the sort of things that we play with our smart speakers and how they can call and respond to us. Gaming is a massively under tapped potential within marketing. Gamification is a horrible word, which is sort of, no one really understands and gets to these very baseline things, as opposed to looking at the real theories of play and games. Yep. And what how they create connections in our brain and how we bring things forward. The thing that I think is the most I'm not really sure about is artificial intelligence, and that's a huge buzzword. It's coming, right? It's here. It's now. It's doing this. But there's also a lot of ethical implications around it. and there's also a lot of massive hype around it. So
those
I guess
are the future things that we're trying to
crack the code
explore and crack the code.
Right.
What about the here and now?
Well, I think those are the here and now. Again, I'm not passing the buck just to get an easy answer, but I think those are the things you work with now, and those are the things you push and pull on now to try to figure out the path to these are the interesting places you play out, and what do you do with them now? What are you actually creating in terms of tangible experience for your client or the business that you're doing? And they're still so nascent, right? There's not a solve on the metaverse. There's not a solve on VR. There's not a solve on AR or voice skills or things. But but when they get rolled into sort of scoping decks or project planning, and people just sort of put them as button items and check boxes, it makes it feel like, oh, okay, we're doing VR. Oh, okay, we're doing this. But what is the experience? These are things that can be demonstrably different. Everything from corporate training, in terms of something, to actually curing people of PTSD. There was an article just the other day about playing Tetris can actually help people recover from a PTSD situation faster. And some of that may just be patterns and the certain flickering of the light. So it could be almost anything, but something like that, simple technique, could really change people's perception.
I could totally see that, because PTSD is built around neural pathways.
Exactly.
And a Tetris game with proper coaching and ideation could help to rewire those neural pathways.
Absolutely. That's very close to some of the conclusions they're arriving at. But that sort of thing, where would that have been thought of? And yet somebody is playing things out in that way. So
really the CEO, the entrepreneur of today, is at a point where they get to go out to the market, talk to customers, and then come and apply these things in new ways and make the future work today. That's what I hear you saying?
Absolutely. And I think there's multiple opportunities depending on their brand identity and the needs of their audience or their customer to apply these things. So
let's talk about how they apply that. Let's go from that concept to some of the things you're working on today as we wrap it up. How are you helping make that future now?
Well, right now, my focus is exclusively on very discrete, and by discrete, I mean specific work for clients. I'm focusing on creative consulting and writing is what I'm doing. So that's it's not the same platform that I was working with before. So it's more just directed on narrative and storytelling. It doesn't connect the dots. Not a very good answer for closing your show out. So,
well, this is also a platform for you. We want to bring out the people and the personalities and what they're working on. And I know you've done this at the innovation lab level. You've done it at the comic book level, and now you're working. It sounds to me like you're working with executives that are trying to figure this stuff out. And as you say, discrete. Not just in individual project discrete, but probably more of a discrete confidentiality.
In all honesty, no. I mean, it is the more discrete, specific project, point of view. So, I mean, and I'm not going to reveal any of it. So in that case, yes, it is discrete. I'm not going to talk about my clients and what they're doing, but in that instance, you never know where a project's going to go. You may go in for a consultation on certain things, or go in to begin writing something, and it may evolve into other opportunities for them because my background is rather varied and plays out. I may start off writing a very simple website or something for them, but then it may end up that they need an innovation tool embedded in that website. So based on my experience, we may start to talk about, okay, what are your goals? What can we do? Where's technology? How do we play it out? I think that's also the matter of keeping yourself informed and engaged for where do you see those dots connecting? And that's why you play with things, even things that you may not really incorporate into your own quote unquote life, you start to see the opportunities that it can make a different connection for you. Are you using a newsletter platform because you want to see where it's going to go? Are you using an AI writing platform because you want to understand? It seems pretty limited now, but maybe this becomes something later. Have you picked up, again, that VR headset and tried on the latest one to sort of say, okay, it's kind of cool, but not quite there yet, except for probably the leading edge people. So you continue to sort of bring those in to inspire yourself. And then that makes you a better professional for yourself, but also the people that you're going to connect with.
Well, as I'm listening to you, I think we could benefit from some of your creativity. In the last couple of weeks, we've launched this podcast, and we've then added a masterclass where you come in and you watch pre-recorded videos and take a quiz and get external materials, but it's all self-study. And then we've worked with Shannon Daniels, who we're trying to get on the show as well, to create a virtual environment on her platform where there's office hours and you can click in and talk to somebody who's, I hate to borrow the term, but just to communicate it, a genius bar for your content strategy, or you can get a one-on-one consultation, and to do all of that from being able to listen to a podcast, go in and learn something about content strategy that you may not know about, and then reach out to get help from somebody. That's one continuum.
I think that's fantastic, especially for professionals who are reinventing themselves or established professionals to even learn new skills of creation. I think that immersion thing, going back to that again, and the hands-onness of certain things, some of these learning continuums you're talking about here, allows people to then develop new skills that even if they're not using them on a day-to-day basis, right, they just understand it better. And I think when you understand the situation better, then you understand the opportunities better. You don't need to be a podcaster, an audio editor, to then better yourself by understanding, well, this mic sounds better, or we're going to be able to re-edit this audio in certain ways, or enrich it, or lower our voice, or raise our voice, or do whatever we're doing to kind of create a better effect. Same thing with video. We can create many fantastic things with these movie studios we carry in our pockets, as opposed to just consuming it. So if you think about how easy it is and what can be created there, you can be a better professional at any level to think about, well, how's that going to work for my business? How's that going to work for my client? So,
and that's really the skill set of the future, is to be able to see an opportunity and build an audience around it, right? And then build in the interactivity so that somebody can become your client. Everything you're describing is a way to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this has been a thrill. This is always a great time to ask you, the how does someone work with you? How do you like to connect with people? What's a good client for you? And how do they get in touch with you?
My client range is extraordinarily diverse at this point, which I love. Right. As I said, I focused a lot on B2B work at one point, and still do. I did a lot of technology work, did a lot of healthcare work. So right now my clients range from ecotourism to straight up B2B technology to healthcare, to consulting, even on business processes based upon, experience. So it's a pretty wide range. I consider almost all, options that I can bring.
Too big or too small?
Kind of, and it's about, what is the story you're looking to tell? The story may be internally, the story may be to different customers, and how can I help you tell it in video, in interactivity, in games. These are all things I've worked with very recently in terms of speaking to different clients. So folks should definitely check out my ongoing newsletter, which is a bit eclectic, but they can find it at storymaze.substack.com, where I share a combination of observations and essays and fiction, as well as recommendations on things that I think are of interest, not just to business, but sort of to creativity overall, as well as a retrospective on a lot of the comic book work I've done. And that's probably the best way to sort of just sort of follow me along on a week-to-week basis. And if folks want to reach out to me, they can find out contact at DG Chichester on Twitter is my Twitter account, which again is extraordinarily eclectic. I just follow my own way, but people could direct message me there, and we can get talking about stuff. And LinkedIn, of course, and easy to find on LinkedIn from a business point of view.
Outstanding. Well, I know for myself over the last several years through our communities and our work with the Ferguson Library and the public speaking there, I've grown a lot. I've learned a lot, and I encourage anybody who's trying to get their business going on the arc of a story in an upward and to the right direction to give you a call.
Thank you, Keith. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
Right back at you, Dan, and we'll see you soon.
Great.
Make it a great day.
Am I leaving?
Get the hell out of here.
Get the heck out of here. All right, man. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Publio podcast. We've enjoyed having you part of our show. If you like what you hear, please like, share, and comment across social media and below. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all of those by searching for Publio. If you are interested in taking our course, please check us out. If your business is in need of a content strategy, we've got a program for you. It's a fully interactive course with worksheets and workbooks and videos, and we'd love to have you be part of the class. And you can always join us for office hours or make one-on-one appointments as well. So check us out at Publio, PUBLI.io on the web, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.